Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first Beyond Our Value educational session from TimberHP, the first of 2026. We're so thrilled that you've chosen to join us today. We'll do a deep dive on our third product, TimberBoard, newly available in the market. So we're very excited to do a little bit of a deep dive with you, answer whatever questions you might have, and show you some of the benefits of this new continuous exterior insulation. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, I'm just going to kill a couple of minutes of time at the top of the session here to let some new attendees join. Jason, if you want to advance the slide, I would love to introduce our panel today. I'm old hat here. I've been with the project from the very beginning, inception nearly, of TimberHP. So I will be moderating the session and answering questions in the background. But I'm so thrilled to introduce three new team members, as well as I'll start with Jason Todd. He's another veteran at TimberHP, our Director of Building Science and Industry Support. We're so thrilled to have him leading the introduction here in our session. And then three new faces, maybe not new to you. They've been in the industry for a long time, but new to TimberHP. We're thrilled to have James Herberman. He's our Director of Field Technology Services. And then we have Ken Kiefer, Strategic Account Manager in the Boston and New England area. And then John Rockwell, Field Education and Specifications Manager in the same area. Um, so yeah, you'll hear a lot from them in just a few minutes. But as people are still trickling in a little bit, if you want to advance another slide, Jason. Um, I know, great team. I couldn't agree more. We are very lucky. And Gregory, thank you. You are the first to um, type into our chat. Everyone else, I invite you to also type in. We just want to know who you are and where you're from, just so we can get a sense of our audience and tailor our discussion to you. So take a quick moment. We have a chat feature and then a Q&A feature. I'd love it if, general um, for this first part, please type into the chat who you are and where you're from, and how familiar you are with wood fiber insulation. 1 being you've never heard of it, what is this stuff? And 10 being you could join our panel here and probably answer some questions much better than I could. So please go ahead and enter into the chat. And then just want to differentiate, we'll use the Q&A for specific questions as the presentation progresses. So I'll be monitoring that in the background. I'll answer via text, or if I know it's going to be answered live, I'll just let you know that that topic's coming up, or I can then interject and ask our team to cover that question if it's not planned to be covered. Thank you so much. I see so many comments rolling in the chat. So I'll just let our panel have a moment to look through. This is amazing. Lots of people in the Northeast. I think we have some folks from Canada joining us as well. So all very exciting. We're excited to share the benefits of TimberBoard with you all, and I hope it's a lively conversation. So without any further ado, Jason, I will pass the torch over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Edith. Yeah, it's great to see folks. Looks like we've got a lot of design builds, some folks that working with their hands in the field. Always appreciate that. Designers, architects, distributors, good representation from the Northeast, and absolutely Q&A, pop those in there. Some of those we'll answer directly, some will open up to the broader audience, and we'll move forward here. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Talk real quick, high level, what TimberHP is as a company. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with us already, been following us along this ride, may, as Edith suggested, know quite a bit about our product, and welcome those questions and comments. as we go through. Timber HP, we often get asked what that HP means, and I see this as the support, the foundation, the three-legged stool of timber, and that is high performance, healthy planet, healthy people. Any one of these things could take precedent over another, depending on what a person is looking for, a specifier is looking for, but they all have equal importance to us, and that is the high performance. It might not be the highest of our values. It might not be the strongest of strengths, if you will. But in our eyes, I think that high performance really does represent that and more. We call this series Beyond Our Value for very good reasons, and we may dabble into some of those beyond our value benefits of the product, and certainly Healthy Planet, great place to live, in my opinion, and I like to keep it that way. So Healthy Planet to us means some due diligence, responsibility, and stewardship in our materials, in how we go about building and promoting building products in the industry, and healthy people. Whether that's indoor air quality concerns or just durability of the building envelope, the benefits, I think, are very clear. Vapor open assemblies do a lot more for not only the assemblies, but also the occupants. So I'll get right into it. All of our product lines are based from the same raw materials. They all have an aspect that are carbon storing, high performance, as I've mentioned, some recyclability in there. Not a lot of systems in place, but we do have some closed loops in our manufacturing facility to optimize the raw materials we use, and also look towards new opportunities out in the field of maximizing building products and letting them roll into the next generation if that comes with deconstruction. Love working with the material. If you're familiar with wood products already, softwood products in particular, when we're framing houses or putting up trim, it's the same kind of safety concerns we have there with cutting nuisance dust. And depending on the product line, and we'll get into that with TimberBoard in particular this time around, we get a pretty high level of fire protection naturally from the board because of the density, but with some additional fire retardants to further enhance that fire resistance, with a number of rated assemblies out there and more coming. Wood fiber, I mentioned the Healthy Planet, Healthy People component of this. We are primarily using residuals from another industry. We have a significant amount of that material mandated in the initial funding of this company, that we are using byproducts. We are a solid waste recovery facility, recycling facility, to some degree, because we're using the material that hits the floor when you're knocking down a round log into rectangular boards. There's a little bit that doesn't quite make the cut, if you will, to the final product, and that material was a great resource for a lot of the paper industry in the great state of Maine. It was added revenue. Some have used it for biomass, but it went to paper, and we're stepping into the place that the paper void has left. We've lost a number of mills since the time that we've actually been in production. That has continued along the way. But you can see the process flow here briefly, just looking at raw material, some binders, some processing, and in the end, a pretty good looking product, if you ask me. Slightly biased. Before I pass this off to other folks on the call here, and just touch on this, in our immediately addressable area, we consider wood fiber insulation, or our strategy is go to market with price point comparable to a traditional newspaper-based cellulose product in the attic for timber fill, somewhere between foam and mineral wool when we talk about a board product, and somewhere between glass and mineral fiber bat when we talk about timber bat. Different characteristics for each, and we'll really focus on TimberBoard on this call and look forward to other opportunities in the future series where we get into other product lines and other points of discussion. I'm going to move this over to John Rockwell, who's new to the team, and I think drinking from the fire hose, as they say in some ways, but also I would add very familiar with high efficiency building, passive house, of building materials in this space. So so happy to have him as part of the team. And John, you can let me know as we go through, and I'll just advance as we go.
Okay. Thank you, Jason, and thank you, colleagues, for having me be part of this. It is a little bit of drinking from the fire hose. I haven't quite been here 2 months yet, and it's a lot of info, but a lot of info that I'm very passionate about. I recognize a lot of names in the chat from previous lunch and learns that I gave with SIGA and with Zender. And as Jason mentioned, I'm pretty passionate and reasonably well informed about the high performance world, and couldn't pass up the opportunity to be part of a team like this that is not only making a product, the demand for which has been so great, but also is domestically produced and has so many benefits, not least of which was reviving, in part, the economy of the town in which the factory exists. And that's been very compelling to me. So, as we all know, building codes are leaning toward more continuous insulation on the outside of buildings, not only to mitigate thermal bridging, but also to keep the sheathing warmer and above the dew point. It's a great strategy to do that. In fact, the more the better outboard of your sheathing. As you all know, and as Jason described, it's a recycled or repurposed or upcycled product of the waste products of the timber industry. I can't remember if there's a slide in here that shows the rectilinear lumber being cut out of a cylindrical log, and the wood chips that are left over, which had no place to go except to maybe biomass prior to us wanting to use them. And so we take advantage of those chips, and as you saw in the process diagram, make our boards. All from softwoods, generally spruce, pine, fir. The addition of an ingredient to make it bind together. That's what that PMDI adhesive is. And then importantly for water repellency is the inclusion of paraffin, a small amount of paraffin wax. So at the lunch and learn I just gave in Boston an hour ago, I actually had somebody pour water out of their glass onto some of the product, and everyone was oohing and ahhing when they get to see it firsthand that the water just beads up on the timber board. So there's the ingredients listed for you. I'm loath to just read through those things. I think you can understand the components of all these, but essentially wood, glue, and wax are the components. Comes in a number of different thicknesses to meet your R value requirements on the outside of the building. And I'm not sure if we're going to the next slide just yet.
Yeah, actually, John, maybe I was just looking at the previous slide, and I can back up one. I think folks may want to know, a little bit more about some of the restrictions we have here. So we have a ESR, an evaluation service report for TimberBoard, and our sizing thicknesses are 1.5 to 4 inches. But that doesn't mean that's where it ends. We do have some other thicknesses available outside of that evaluation report.
That's right. And I also want to mention that bullet beneath that about the R value, which is comparable to some other products that are out there, certainly not the same R value as foam, but of course we're talking beyond R value in this presentation. It's always good to have a vapor permeable material on the outside so that when conditions allow, that is drier conditions on the outside in wintertime in this climate zone, means that any moisture in the assembly can dry outward and be evacuated from the wall assembly. I know that with the high compressive strength bullet that we see there is really convenient when doing vertical strapping or any kind of strapping on the outside of the building, it won't compress if you are overdriving the screw, and therefore it'll be easier to attach your cladding in a sort of plumb clean condition.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people on this chat. Go ahead, Jason. Did you want to jump in?
No, continue,
Yep.
please.
So I saw my friend Greg Smith in the chat, patiently waiting for Class A. That is in the cards this year, but right now the material is a Class B rated and therefore appropriate for Type 5A construction. That's just with the board. Our other two products are Class A rated and can fill the void literally in cavity insulation and also for sound attenuation.
Yeah.
You'll see, I think we're going to see a very interesting slide coming up about buffers changes in temperature and humidity. We'll get to that shortly. Yeah, that's even there. I'm fascinated by this because the codes only deal with R value and don't necessarily really think about dynamic performance. So what you're seeing here is a time lapse of a 10-minute segment. That's the x-axis on the graph to the left that shows what happens when you bombard the outside of the insulation with heat lamp temperature simulating sunlight. And look what's happening in the center, where the temperature sensor is located in the center of the insulation assembly. So the temperature of the arguably poorest R value is lower than the temperatures of the materials with much higher R values. That's very compelling, so that if you have a daily cycle where there's some bombarding for a certain amount of time and then nightfall comes, you're never going to have that heat marching through the assembly. And that, to me, is terrifically exciting and something we don't really think about. So I'll if Jason, you want to jump in on that, if there's any additional
No,
thoughts.
I think that's great that it's the combination of the density of the material, of its heat capacity, and that's a real critical thing. Wood has a wonderful high heat capacity. And another way of looking at this is sort of in layman's terms, the personal experience is picking up a stone that's been sitting in the sun versus a stick. That stone has got great density, but not so good. It's very open to receiving that heat, unlike a wood product, which has that capacity to slow things down. And I think there's another parallel conversation that we're starting to see in some early research when we start talking about moisture. And I think the next slide is a little bit some early test data that we've gotten from University of Maine. This is Forest Product Lab, and the gist of this is the relative humidity of board attached to a structure submitted to a very intense rain, and over I think it was a 12-hour period. And the assembly on the left-hand side is TimberBoard, mechanically attached to, it happened to be CLT. And on the right side is something similar, but EPS. So I'm going to take over your section here on this, but this one's near and dear and fascinating to me. With the drying period, I think is what we're really trying to point out here. There's this spike on the left-hand side on the relative humidity of the material as it hits that outermost structure of the board, and then a pretty rapid drying once the rain is turned off, and you don't get that drying effect. You don't get the mechanical effect of the capillary movement of moisture and buffering. Slight rise on the left as it moves its way through other layers of the board, but it really holds that moisture for 20 some odd days in a foam product. Not necessarily harmful to the foam itself, but certainly would be to structure associated with it. I think we've got another little side-by-side comparison. John, you got more to add on this slide?
Yep. Well, it depends on what people's particularly interested in, whether it's the R value or permeance and all that. But the things that my eye is really drawn to is the sustainability. When you look at the fact that you are sequestering carbon by reusing wood and not burning it, but actually forming it into something that goes into a building that can be recycled, the difference in carbon stored versus carbon used between the TimberBoard and all other insulation products that you see in this list is extraordinary. In the luncheon room that I give, we talk about a 1,500 square foot passive house with 5.5-inch cavity insulation and I believe 5.5-inch exterior insulation and something on the order of 27,000 pounds of CO2 equivalent is saved in that assembly for a house of that size. Extraordinary numbers as a result of the energy and very little energy that goes into the creation of the product in terms of oven temperatures and things like that, compared to, for example, what you need to do to melt rock and form it into fibrous material. So I'm by no means an expert in the chemistry of all this. And if Jason, you want to jump in to sort of augment what I'm saying, I was just drawing attention to the sustainability aspect of it. I think a lot of people are comfortable and familiar with the fact that it's a vapor permeable and almost virtually airtight material. So that's a quite safe choice at 15 to 22 grams per inch of thickness. So that's another great quality relating to the chart that you just showed earlier of the drying capacity of material as it leaves.
Yeah, I think there's a real great connection to it being wood-based product. We're reconfiguring it for sure. We are adding more to the TimberBoard. There has to be a binder. There has to be something that holds the bat together. But good, solid performance all around. John, I'm gonna advance the slide and maybe we talk a little bit more about fire, that bottom row there, because this is also very compelling.
Have a look at this is real time, is it not? Is there any editing into this slide that
I think we did move through the foam ones a little quickly because they happen so fast.
Yeah, exactly. So we could sit here for quite a while and know that there's, well, very little flame is generated. You see when the blowtorch goes off, because of that difficulty that thermal energy has getting through the product, you're safe inside. And we'll see our devoted Edith removing the shell of the building, and our little structure inside is safe and sound as a result.
Yeah, good stuff.
You almost don't need to talk for this. Not to mention what is expelled when the combustion occurs, when foam burns, the horrific dioxins and things like that, or whatever goes into this. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
I can defer to you. This is sort of future state. I mean, we've spent a long time getting to this point. We've started from a product that has been in the market for well over 20, 25 years at this point in Europe. We've not innovated. This is translating to our market. And we are very excited to be looking at innovation and moving forward. We're continuing to work through on accelerated aging. I think we've seen really good results there, getting more data around compressive resistance and bond strengths to stability. But I think also air tightness. I'm not going to lay claims to air tightness yet because we haven't done that testing. It's underway now, but I feel pretty confident that we're going to have some very impressive numbers there. And we did have, as mentioned before in the ESR, a narrower scope. We're working on those thicker boards to get them into the valuation service report, and also exploring increased fire resistance to get into other construction types.
Jason, you get a quick question. I want you to have a chance to answer it live. Will the expanded product offering also include a 1-inch board? Is that in the works?
It is a possibility. It is not immediate in the works right now. We feel like that 1.5-inch board is sort of the threshold for most things. We have to mess with density a little bit just to make it a more stable, secure, durable product. So that is something for future. We'll be working on these thicker grades first, making sure we get that all dialed in. And those are available now, just not on the ESR. And then the 1-inch board will probably follow. maybe a little bit about cutting. John, have you had
Sure,
some
sure.
field experience there?
Um, to be honest, not with TimberBoard. I mean, I've obviously manipulated the samples of it. Um, but the whether you cut TimberBoard or cut timber bat, the only result is sawdust. And so last Friday, James and Ken and I worked on a Habitat for Humanity project with the Upper Valley Habitat folks, training them how to use it, which did not take long at all. And all day, without gloves and without respirators, we worked with the products, and there was no skin irritation. All there was sawdust. And admittedly, 10 people cutting material and running around back and forth, um, there was a lot of sawdust, but there's nothing about it that caused any irritation to me or anything like through, which is great. And regular tools are all you need to use. Nothing super exotic. I suppose with thicker um, versions of the TimberBoard, like you see down in one of the lower bullets, there's something called a Prezi beam cutter, which is attaches to a circular saw, and it looks like a hybrid chainsaw circular saw with a little guide to prevent binding behind it, but it's quite easy. It doesn't smoke or get hot, and just keep your tools sharp like you should anyway. And it's just an easy installation.
Awesome. Awesome.
Look at Trevor McCabe's comment in the chats. That's great. Electric chainsaws.
Yes. I've seen people gang cut rafter tails with chainsaws and attachments. The same thing would work. I'm not
Yes.
going to recommend that to anybody. Maybe anybody in the state of Maine probably can run a chainsaw since birth. But obviously, safety is imperative. We have talked with some of the European manufacturers of other wire saws and those sort of things, and those may be available in the future. We'll stay tuned. Mafel is one company in mind, but there are others. Thanks a lot, John. I'm gonna move this over to another newer member, but also, are you the TimberBoard ninja now, or
Yes.
not sure? But we'll introduce Ken here and let him talk through some of the building science components and a little bit more about our ESR.
Yeah, absolutely. This material is so straightforward, and it's so wonderful to work with. To just kind of go back on what John was saying about cutting. I have a wood shop in my garage, and I've never had an issue cutting any of this stuff on any of my standard woodworking tools. Obviously, the thicker stuff needs a thicker saw, but when I'm cutting samples and stuff like that to take to meetings, my table saw does a great job. My bandsaw does a great job. My circular saw, and I know the contractors out there are gonna just hate me when I say all of my hand tools are Ryobi. They're not DeWalt's, they're not Milwaukee's. I like green, sorry. Yeah, all of those handle it really, really well. And then when we're installing it on the walls, we got to start thinking about control layers, right? So we've got our water control layer, what's going to be your WRB, your flashing, your cladding. I mean, those are the things that are keeping water out of your building. And it's important, like John said earlier, TimberBoard has been treated with paraffin wax to help shed bulk water. And it's really, really good at it. And it doesn't matter if it's the cut edge or the face, that paraffin wax is all the way through the product. The vapor management of the TimberBoard, it is a vapor open product. It's a wood-based product. Wood does a great job at handling water and vapor and diffusing it and distributing it and letting it dry. Jason showed that graph from the University of Maine earlier on about how it got wet and then immediately dried out. So that really helps make sure that you're not trapping vapor from your interior space, especially if you're in a cold climate like ours. I mean, I look outside and I know it's cold and dry, and my house is warm, thankfully, and humid. So all of that humidity is trying to work its way out. The air control layer. This is really important and can be either the water control or the vapor control layer. So that's really important, whether you're taping your sheathing seams, whether you are adding an air and weather barrier on the outside, or whether you're taping your continuous interior vapor control membranes. That really is going to be the most efficient way to prevent water damage in your buildings, is making sure that you don't have air that's carrying humidity working its way through your walls in any way that it feels like it wants to, and then finding cold spots to condense on. So the air control layer is supremely important. And then you have your thermal control layer, and that's where, you know, the TimberBoard, the TimberBat and fill, they really, really shine. On the TimberBoard, I mean, it's really important to understand that the warmer we can keep our sheathing, well, now you've just taken out the condensation point from that vapor that might try to make its way through, and it will no longer condense on the inside of your wall. The condensation plane now is outside of the wall sheathing, where it's safe to condense and dry out, because it's not within your wall cavity. So those thermal control layers in conjunction with the air control, vapor control, and water control just really, really give you a superiorly durable, comfortable, and resilient building, as far as making sure that, you know, you're warm, you're dry, you're not growing mold, mildew, and you're not rotting your building out. And this is a quick little example of, you know, this is a natural product. You know, wood, trees grow all over the place, and they do a really, really great job at managing moisture. You know, we're taking and cutting these up into smaller pieces, but the capillarity that we see that transports that moisture from the hot, humid to the dry, cold is in effect. You know, even though it's a smaller piece, you know, we can get capillarity from one fiber to the next, even though we're rearranging those fibers. So our warm, humid air can work its way through our interior, not the air, but the warm, humidity. I don't know, I want to call it air, because if you've done a good job with your air barrier, but water vapor is going to make its way through your wall assembly in the direction that it needs to, based on physics, which is from warm, humid to cold, dry. And in, I'd say, most of everything above the Mason-Dixon line, this is going to happen more often from inside to outside. Then you get to about the middle of the country, and you might see a little bit more stagnation in which way it's moving, because it's a steadier climate. And then you get down to the far south, where it's way more hot and humid outside than inside, and you're going to see that vapor drive want to move inward. And that's the great thing about like what we offer is we offer something that is going to manage the bulk rain from the outside because of that paraffin wax. It's going to manage any of the vapor buildup from just daily life existing. A family of 4 puts out about 5 gallons of water per day, just through breathing, showering, cooking, even nasty stuff like your toilet water evaporating back into your house. If you've got a fish tank like I do right next to me, that's constantly, I put a gallon a day into that thing because it's always evaporating. So it's really important to have a good insulation that can properly manage all of the moisture load of your building.
Can we get a lot of questions around WRB and WRB placement? Maybe you could speak to that. I think you know a little bit about
Yes.
membranes and WRBs.
Absolutely, I might know a thing or two about where about WRBs and where they go. I mean, for us, we can do either one. You know, you can put the WRB behind the board, which is going to be the simplest location for a site built project. So if you're working on site, detail the membrane behind the timber board. So get that up on the wall, make it continuous and tight, get your windows taped in and everything like that. And then you can put the board on afterwards. So anything that gets between the seams of the board, any moisture that gets between the seams of the board, you don't have to worry about taping them. You don't have to worry about covering them, because you have a great weather resistant barrier, air barrier behind it. And that sequencing and detailing is much simpler in that location, and simplicity is the key to success. The simpler you make it for the crew on site, the more likely you are going to be successful in keeping water out of the building. Now, on a let's say a systems built, prefab, when you are bringing big panels out to site, it's really hard to tie those panels into each other if they're covered in a TimberBoard or any exterior insulation, because, well, it's covered. So you can't make a really tight tie-in connection from one panel to the other without removing some material or leaving material off. So in that case, where it's much more controlled in a factory environment, and to make the tie-ins from panel to panel easier, putting that on after the TimberBoard can be more successful in that case.
Great. And now to get complicated, not keeping things simple, but maybe a couple of notes about our ESR, evaluation service report, and the limited thicknesses that we have currently.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so right now, we've mentioned it a couple of times. Right now, the ESR has been evaluated for sizes 1 inch or 1.5 to 4 inches. Those come in half-inch increments. The surface burning characteristics, I know, like Greg Smith is very excited for the Class A board. Currently, even with the lack of a borate for fire resistance, we're at Class B at a thickness of 4 inch. We have a flame spread index of 75, smoke developed index of 450, and that's really great for a non-fire treated wood product. I mean, the product you saw it in the video, it chars. That char helps protect the wood from further burning. This is why, if you've ever seen the disaster at Notre Dame, that's why a lot of the old timber managed to stay intact and not collapse, because it charred and protected the rest of the structure behind it. And then the thermal resistance value, that one is so that was so cool that, hey, we have this R5 at 1.5 inches, with that 3.5 ish per inch thickness per inch R value, but having that thermal mass really, Jason, you told me a cool story about during the testing that the 9 1/4 board took how long to come up to steady state for that to soak up all the heat?
It took eight days to get to steady state. And that's a thermal test where you have a hot plate and a cold plate, and it's the R value, the resistance value goes from one side to the other. I think other products would be done in a day pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's, so when we say the thermal resistance value, I mean, that's one static measure of the product, but that the R value doesn't degrade as the temperature cools down. That's really important. Polyiso can lose, up to, I think, 2 R at really cold temperatures below freezing, like we see here in the Northeast quite a bit. And we don't lose any R value when we're in that situation where we haven't covered the board with a WRB and it's raining and it's getting a little bit wet. We can hold 15% of the weight, the product's weight, in moisture without any degradation in R value, and that's really important as well, because many other insulation materials cannot do that.
Yeah. I was just looking at the surface burning characteristics on this. This is more of a general thing about Class B. Flame spread of 75 is the top end, and that smoke development is 450 top end. If you look at some of the video that we saw during John's section, and the smoke coming off of that foam versus board or even the bat product, I think our actual test data was something like 51 flame spread, and I don't know, it might have been 15 smoke, something like that. I think that's really important. It's just, as John had alluded to, what comes off of things in a fire matters a lot. It matters to the occupants. It matters to those with the hazmat gear, and that's why they wear it. Actually doing
Yeah,
the hard work there.
absolutely.
But
And I can attest to, I've done some little backyard tests in my fire pit out back, and I put some framing lumber in my fire pit with a piece of timber board, and the framing lumber burned around it, and the timber board just sat there as a little glowing red block, and never really burned. It just charred and got hot, and by the time the framing lumber, the 2x6s were dust, it was still there in its block form. So
yeah,
that's a testament to the strength of the material, even without the flame treatment. On corrosiveness, we didn't show any corrosiveness with copper or steel. It is important to note that raw aluminum and wood don't like each other, and this is all wood. So if you're using like step flashings or stuff like that, and you're putting it right up against your plywood sheathing, that's also a no-no, because the wood and aluminum don't play well together all the time. But that's only when raw aluminum is directly touching any wood product, not just a timber board or a timber mat. The fungal resistance, we don't show any fungal growth, and that's a product of like the paraffins and the MDIs that go along with that. And then when we add the borate for flame treatment, that gets even better, because fungus does not like salt, and borate is a natural salt. And then the moisture vapor absorption, we don't gain more than 15% of weight by moisture when tested in accordance with ASTM 739. And like I said earlier, we also don't lose any R value when we are at our max water absorption. So that is a testament just to the durability of the product there.
Hey, Ken, real quickly before we move on, could we go back one slide, or just do you have any UV considerations? And what if you have an open joint cladding? Is there exposure considerations that we should know about?
Well, I'll let Jason speak to the UV, because I know we have current testing that I think is just completed or just about completed on that. But if you're concerned with the looks, you will see it through an open joint facade. So I would personally, from a aesthetic standpoint, I would cover that in a black UV stable building wrap, just for aesthetics. But I'll let Jason answer a little bit about the testing we've done for UV on the board.
yeah, and I think it's actually more than aesthetics. It's a durability concern. I'm not entirely that concerned about it, but the UV is an issue over time, but it's only a surface issue. UV will break down the glue bonds. The fiber itself will yellow. That's about it, just like you would see pine board left in the sun. And so that's not the big concern, but it's the bond break. We typically see within a normal construction cycle no degradation. We're talking about 6 months on a sidewall, maybe less if it's in a roof application left exposed, just because it's more direct and the potential for washing some of that fiber off. We've had customers that started with European products, built, manufactured in the same fashion with their products in a construction cycle. It turned out to be more than a year left on the side of a house, and the board got a little fuzzy. That was about it. The fuzziness is the bond break. It's the fiber getting released, but then we're talking about millimeter or less. This is very much a superficial thing. So I would go with some kind of protection that is UV stable and meant for open joint cladding for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. We're getting some install questions in the chat. I think we'll move forward. Thank you, Ken, and introduce James next, who is field and technical services, and also has been drinking from proverbial fire hose of late, coming from various parts of the industry, some of them wood products. But James, I'll let you, I'll move forward through the slides here and let you talk to some of the install guides that we've just wrapped up recently.
Yeah, and that's true. Drinking from the fire hose. I was taking notes about that UV explanation. So, and I also want to point out I have seniority over John. I've been with the company 3 months now, so that makes me a little bit more special, I guess. My background is my wood construction, wood products background is with Huber Engineered Woods, making a Vantech. And I was there for the early days of a product you may have heard of, Zip Wall, when that was brand new and the competition was Tyvek. And it was exciting. It was tough. It was hard. But to watch it ramp up and grow and dominate like it does was fun. And that's a key reason that I wanted to join TimberHP is it's, at least in the North American market, it's a new product. It's got a lot of benefits. So every place I see a green wall, I want to start seeing a TimberHP TimberBoard. So that's kind of my goal. To jump in, my part, hopefully be a little bit boring because it's going to be a repeat. But this is pretty much our solutions depending on your climate zone. This comes straight from the IRC codes. For most people, if you're 2x4, you're probably going to have that 3.5-inch minimum timber bat or timber fill with that 3-inch timber board. And then if you're a 2x6 framing, it's probably going to be that 5.5 timber bat timber fill with that 1.5-inch timber board. Those are minimums, but if you notice when you add the two cavities up, you get about 5 to 6 inches of our product for that installation.
Great. Yeah.
Next slide.
Okay.
James, sorry, while you're on this slide, just another question that came up. Hold on, I'm getting to it. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I'll come back to you.
Are
Come
you,
back.
are you,
All right.
Edith, I
there
know
was a
I know it's
question about why are we recommending 3 inches, I think, on the 2x4s, but only 1.5 inches on the 2x6. I did see that one.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was trying to find it.
I thought I
And
answered that in the chat.
Okay. Maybe
you?
that's why I disappeared.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. So moving on.
Total R,
Yeah,
total
well,
required R value to code.
Required R value, it really comes down to the ratios on each side of the wall to control the potential for condensing on that air transported moisture from the cavity.
Good. Thank you. On the installation sequence is pretty straightforward. You've heard this a couple of times. The key is that pre-planning, particularly modifying your rough opening in the walls to bump out your windows and doors to anticipate that timber board thickness. If our thickness is going to be a little bit different than what you're accustomed to, you just have to account for that. When you're purchasing your windows, you're doing that initial design. And then following suit, this was also a question about needing to do any sort of sealing of our product. The answer, that should be done prior to the installation. So you want to make sure the doors and windows, base flashing, and any other like wall penetrations, they're all flashed back to the WRB. That is that first key step. Have that shell. That WRB shell is that point at which you should be installing the timber board. Pretty straightforward. You start from the bottom of the wall, then have successful rows of panels in a staggered brick. The key there is just to make sure you offset at least 10 inches so your vertical joints and adjacent rows don't align. Next slide. And this gets to a couple of questions. First, just to get the timber board on the wall, just use some corrosion resistant nail or screws to fasten it through your structural sheathing on the wall, just enough to hold it in place. Typically, that's about 4. And we do recommend a button or cap fastener. That was a question from, let's see, Ross. Ross had that question. So pretty straightforward. And what's interesting, as you get to the thicker boards, the 2-inch 3, they literally stack up like blocks. So it really just needs to hold the board there long enough so you can have it's the straps that will do the true fastening of our timber board into the wall structure. And then what we have, that table comes straight from the code again. We got it based on your stud spacing. And then we have your two options on thicknesses in terms of your vertical screw spacing. This should be pretty straightforward. The key is that your straps, you want to make sure you got 1.5 inches into your studs. That's the real strength of the product. So you just need to get a couple of screws or nails into the sheathing to hold it there. But once you have your straps, you want to make sure you got at least 1.5 inches penetration. Next slide. And then you're going to see a similar pattern here with the buck windows. The depth of that buck will vary. The key is that you should start with the interior of the wall to the exterior side of the insulation to determine that size. That buck should be structurally fastened to that roof opening based on your manufacturer's recommendation. And then, like we said in the 2 slides before, that buck should be air and weather sealed back to the WRB. The windows and doors, same back to that exterior face. And then any air sealing and bulk moisture flashing should be installed based on whatever window and door. And again, this is to make sure that the area around the window already has a properly secured WRB layer from the buck all the way back to the WRB. That is the prime opportunity to install the TimberBoard. And one additional note, when you are installing around a window, just make sure that you get creative with the shapes so you're not at the corners, just to break that kind of air seal and that thermal seal.
That's great. Thank you, James.
Next slide.
I think we have a few minutes left here to go through some additional questions. I know there have been a number coming through the chat. Edith, is there anything in particular you want to highlight, or should I just work through the list at this point?
You're welcome to work through the list. Maybe we'll start. We had a couple questions about West Coast availability.
Yes, I know we do have a few folks out on the West Coast as distributors that are bringing in material, just starting that. Obviously, the big hindrance to moving insulation across the country is just the cost of the shipping itself. So we talk about addressable market being the Northeast, the wraparound in Canada, the Mid-Atlantic towards the south, out towards Ohio, River Valley, that area as the addressable market. Doesn't mean that it can't go further than that, but then the balance of price and shipment gets into play there.
And there was a clarification on that ceiling, and he talked about some German or European manufacturers do recommend, I think it was the cut edge. We do in our installation instructions at the base, we do recommend some sort of weather sealing at the base. Did you want to add something to that, Jason?
I just, we've started talking about some of the flashing details and splashback at the bottom of the wall. I think that's worth exploring further. We recommend a distance from grade, like any foam product, like any wood product. There's a certain clearance. Part of that is for bugs. Mostly that's for moisture. If there's a situation where close to grade, close to a roof deck, something where you're going to get a buildup of snow in high snow country, or a lot of moisture and splashback, it might be useful to have a liquid applied variable perm flashing or addition, if you will. It could be membrane, on the first course, like you'd handle ice damming on roofs. That first layer is impermeable, but it allows the rest of the field to dry. But more of an extreme case, and we'll be adding additional tech tips. So if there are more technical questions you're not finding in the resources we have available up front on our website, reach out to our inside sales team, and we can try and troubleshoot solutions.
I
That's
saw
great,
an
Jason. I
interesting,
also, oh,
sorry, I saw an interesting question, Edith, about where to set the windows relative to TimberBoard. And do we have a recommendation for that? And I would say the answer to that is no. There are many ways to detail a window, and if you really want to geek out about it, window location is optimized in terms of performance if it's in the middle of the R value of the assembly, of the wall assembly, not necessarily. It's easier to detail for sure when it's flush with the outside of a TimberBoard, but you may forfeit some of window performance in terms of shading and exposure and things like that. So there's no recommendation specifically that it must be mounted to the exterior of TimberBoard.
thanks, John. Yeah, that's great. I've posted a couple times in the chat the link to our TimberBoard install guide that James was referencing. So on pages 16 through 18, we have examples and guidance for the typical buck window, the outie window, the innie window, and the in-betweenie as well. So a couple of options there with details. We also had a question about tongue and groove products in the works. I answered
Yeah.
that offline, but Jason, maybe you could touch on that really quickly.
Sure. That's been talked about quite a bit. We do not have the profiling equipment in place. We are looking at that. Probably the first thing that you'll see from the 4x8 sheet format will just be a 2x8 sheet format, especially for the thicker boards. We're working on the ripping capacities off the line. And then we will look probably into the next year at the T&G profiles. Some of the solutions that you get with T&G are really maybe a layering of board instead of a single mass of board with the joints. You can overlap those joints. It's another trip around the house, of course, but that adds air tightness, water and weather resistance without the TNG or having to tape joints or anything along those lines.
Amazing. And I wanted to answer Dennis's question. He had a specific question about one slide back. So we'll answer that live. We can go one slide back. Okay. Clarify
A being the
location A.
extension. It's a window buck extension. This could be full dimensional lumber, right, James? We could do this out of a 2x that's cut to the proper depth. It could be something that just is not a bigger mass and a bigger thermal break, but it could be done out of plywood. And there may be some commercial options as well to extend that window rough opening.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'll add that becomes very, very important, especially as the windows mounted to the exterior, because if those windows need support, they need to have something to rest on. And I typically have seen this most often out of 3/4 inch plywood or 3/4 inch Advantech sheathing. But you also need, even if the window's set back, you need a nailing surface for your trim and finishes. So that just it's really helpful to go all the way around the window, whether it be after the window is in, you could put it flush with the sheathing, and you could picture frame this in 2x material. They don't necessarily need to be all the way back in if you're not mounting the window to the far exterior. But yeah, it's just basically support for the window if it's on the outside, or support for your finish and trim if it's if the window is inside of that.
We also have another $1 million question, and that is, Jason, would you speak a little bit to our plans for roof application guidance, and specifically, are we working with manufacturers that can provide a system warranty?
For us, we have a limited liability warranty on our product. It is baseline. We make it based on a quality assurance program, and we feel very confident that there shouldn't be any warranty claims based on that. But if there was, for some reason, that we did not produce it, internal bond or the strength of a part of the board or something along those lines, we don't currently have roof applications that did not manage to get into our ESR. We're working on that as a next step. What we can provide right now are the technical details, the compressive strength, the dimensional stability, all of those things that architect or engineer of record can use to talk with their HJ, their code official, in order to add this to their project. I think it works well in roofs. I think that we'll have some good solid applications for you in the future. But currently, because of the way we've gone to market without a standard to base this product on, there's a European standard for testing. There has not been one here. We've had some limited movements with the Code Council. They're comfortable with exterior walls. We're working towards some large-scale fire testing and also the characteristics testing that will help us expand into the ESR. But reach out to us if you want some of the technical information to help make that decision for yourself. It doesn't compress easily, and I think it works well in that application. We're coming up 2 minutes over the hour. Maybe a few more quick questions, and then we'll wrap things up. Anything in particular catch anyone's eye they want to address before we hop off?
We had a question about product availability. So I will just speak to that really quickly. We are working with distributors and stocking dealers across the Northeast. And so keep an eye out on our website. Up in the top right corner, you can find a button to find a dealer. And so you can scope out the available lumber yards in your region. And please also note that we're actively adding to that list weekly. Right now our primary distribution is in the Northeast, and we're looking to expand that little by little over time.
Great. Great.
And all three products are currently available: board, bat, and fill. I know everyone's super excited about the board.
And before you all jump, Jason, would you just advance to the last slide? I just wanted to give everyone an opportunity here. Feel free to scan this QR code and request a TimberBoard sample. We have a number of TimberBoard samples in reserve for folks who attend webinars, and so please scan the QR code, fill out your information, and we'd love to get a sample over for you so you can feel the difference in your hands. Truly, it's really fun to just have on your desk or play around with. You don't have to be afraid about touching this insulation. So that's nice. And then also just wanted to share Ken and John's contact information. If you have any questions about a specific detail or build, feel free to reach out to them, our sales team.
Yes, and if you get a sample of the TimberBoard and you drill a hole in the top of it, it's a nice little pen holder.
And I'll also pop the link
Perfect
to
desk
the
ornament.
QR to the dealer, to the TimberBoard sample into the chat. Just give me a second for those who don't use QR codes.
Great.
I don't remember the name, but there was somebody who asked a question about getting a copy of this presentation so they could communicate with their architect for a project that they're working on. And we, of course, can do that. Edith will send that out. But if you want to reach out to me, I directly answered to your question with my email address. So I'm sorry I don't remember your name. I've just been scrolling through all the notes. But reach out to me. I'll give you some specific information that you can talk about with your architect.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thanks everyone from the TimberHP team, and look forward to future conversations with you and others as we restart this Beyond Our Value series. Have a great rest of your afternoon.